All right, everyone, this is Tim, this New York Giants Straight Talk, brought to you by the mighty FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com, the number one sportsbook in America. I live to use FanDuel. 4th of July is coming up in a couple days. July 2nd is going to be the kickoff for NCAA College Football 2027. I've been waiting on that one. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to talk about the New York Football Giants for the next month, leading directly into training camp. We will be there for training camp. We're going to be there for the first 3 open days, which I Bleav are the 31st, the 1st, and the 2nd, 31st of July, and the 1st and 2nd into August. So we're going to be doing our live training camp reports. We're going to be giving you reports from the field, from the stands, from the Airbnb, wherever the hell we're going to be. But it's going to be fun. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We have another big show coming up mañana. It talks about, people ask me all the time, and this is kind of where we're going by running back by committee. People ask me all the time, Tim, if there's a weak link to this Giant 2026 season, if there is an Achilles heel, what is it? And we've talked about a couple different positional groups, but tomorrow I really want to talk about one positional group in particular, and literally it could be a 2-hour show. That's how bad this position group is, and this is how detrimental it could be to the team. Want to get to the chat real quick while we're standing here? Joe Ferry says, why isn't Patrick Ricard pancake in the thumbnails? He's all pro. What kind of content is this? I usually don't make content for guys that only play 30% of the snaps, 38% of the snaps. I usually don't refer to those guys as needle movers. He's going to be a bit part. He's going to be a bit player. If he was so important to Derrick Henry in the running game in Baltimore, he would still be there. Joe Ferry says, good morning, Chad. Great day for another Giants New York Straight Talk stream. Smash that like button now. Check out the mighty FanDuel. WK says, good morning, boys. WK says, Tim is definitely right yesterday. He's saying one injury away from Tracy, either Singletary or Miller. 100% need to explore the running back market before the game 1. I mean, that kind of wraps this up. That kind of wraps this up in a nutshell. You literally have to start exploring the running back market. And I'm going to go to the WK's next comment. He says, I'm not comfortable with Singletary because he's past his prime. Tracy is a number 3. I'm going to say Tracy is a number 2 on some teams. And Turbo is like the feather from Forrest Gump. Yeah, he is light. He's light in the caboose. Listen, running back by committee in NFL history has worked. I'm not going to sit there and tell you that having a committee of running backs, you take a look at our own Earth, Wind, and Fire with Brandon Jacobs, Derek Ward, and Amon Green. Amon Bradshaw. I saw the Amon Green thing come up because we're going to talk about that in a minute. It does work. The pinnacle of backfield by committee is the 72 Dolphins. You got Zonka, Mercury Morris, and Jim Kick. Zonka ran for over 1,100 yards. Morris ran for over 1,000 yards. Kick came in, and he was that versatile. He was that guy that did everything. He caught the ball, he ran the ball, he scored touchdowns. And what did they do? That was the engine that powered the Dolphins to a 14-0 perfect season, the first perfect season in NFL history. You take a look at the Carolina Panthers. Now, and some of these guys I'm going to talk about, we have to remember Cam Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary aren't these guys, because some of these guys we're going to talk about had prolific careers. But Carolina Panthers in 2008 with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, excuse me. It was called Smash and Dash. Over 2,200 yards and I think almost 30 touchdowns. You had the 85 Raiders, which had probably one of the most explosive backfields in NFL history when you had in his prime Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson. Both are Hall of Fame guys. You go back to the 60s Packers And let's just say that we're not going to be mistaking Cam Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy for Jim Taylor and Paul Hornung. 4 NFL championships, split backfield. One of my favorite teams, which was Thunder and Lightning, was the 2006 and 2007 Jacksonville Jaguars, where you had the venerable Fred Taylor and the bowling ball Maurice Jones-Drew. You had the $1 million backfield with the Rams in the 50s. I mean, that was something special as well. But you have to look at this from a perspective of a lot of these guys that we have are not these names. You could even go back to like 17 with Mark Ingram Jr., because Mark Ingram Sr. is in jail, and Alvin Kamara. It was boom and zoom. That some people consider that, which I don't think so, but some people consider that duo as the best running back by committee in NFL history, because Mark Ingram had over 1,100 yards, and then he had another 416 yards receiving and 12 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara had 738 yards, plus another 826 yards receiving and 14 touchdowns. So these two guys combined for 26 touchdowns. But at the end of the day, what was the outcome? It's the same thing with the 2006 Atlanta Falcons. With people aren't going to remember Warrick Dunn and T.J. Duckett. That was the perfect example of true thunder and lightning. Duckett was the Brandon Jacobs. He was the battering ram. He was the goal line guy. Warrick Dunn, I remember him more from his days, of course, over in Tampa. But it was the pure versatility. And you can even go back into like the 49ers with Frank Gore and Kendall Hunter, which propelled the 49ers to a 13-3 record, which was more using the NFL equivalent to the West Coast offense. And this is kind of where we're going to go this, but I do not think that Cam Skattebo or Tyrone Tracy or Frank Gore or Kendall Hunter. Because Kendall Hunter was a rookie at the time. He was a change of pace backs and ran the ball for 111 times for 473 yards, scored 3 touchdowns, added another 16 receptions for 195 yards as well. But I don't think we have that bell cow back. Does anyone remember Adrian Peterson and Toby Gerhart? Toby Gerhart was this guy that was going to come into the league. I Bleav he was at Stanford, and he was going to destroy the league. He was going to be this guy. Well, they combined him in Minnesota for 1 year. But then again, like I said, it was a prolific year. But is Cam Skattebo, Tyrone Tracy, or Devin Singletary Adrian Peterson? You got to think about it. You have to think. Looks like I said, sometimes you have to go back into NFL history to get a better understanding of what's in front of you. And I know a lot of people don't like to do that, but I like to do that. I'm an NFL history guy. And of course, you have Brandon Jacobs, like I said, Derek Ward and Bradshaw. That was a great set, but I don't even see any of these guys that we have fitting into any of those molds. And to WK's response earlier, we are literally one injury away. We are a Cam Skattebo sprained ankle. We are a sore shoulder Tyrone Tracy injury away from having either Eric Gray or Turbo Miller as your starting running back. Everyone wants to talk about the kid out of New Mexico. The kid out of New Mexico, the undrafted free agent. You're an undrafted free agent for a reason. And I keep telling this people, you are an undrafted free agent for a reason. It's not like all the 32 teams passed on you for 7 rounds because there was something so great about you. You are the diamond in the rough. Hold on, someone's texting me. Hate when people text you when you're trying to stock market thing. But I mean, it's not like we have. He could be this diamond in the rough. I don't know. I can't tell you. But like I said, running backs by committee have shown to work. But not having, they always say if you have 3 of something, you have 1 of nothing. And one of the biggest issues with the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty was the fact that they probably could have been better if they actually had a running back. If they had if they kept a serviceable running back, and that's why they went out and got Kenneth Walker to help carry, to be the bell cow guy. That's what we are looking at right now. And I keep scanning the wire. And I went back and I looked at the, like I said, Najee Harris is still the number 1 guy on the list. But again, he's coming off the Achilles. Antonio Gibson. I think Antonio Gibson would be an interesting fit for the team. But the problem is right now he does a lot of everything but a little of nothing. Joe Mixon is still evidently dealing with the injuries. Kareem Hunt would be an interesting pickup. I would even take Miles Booby Sanders at this point in time. Cam Akers is still out there. Austin Eckler is still out there. Khalil Herbert is not going to be your bell cow back, but until he hit Miami, and of course, when you hit Miami, a lot of things bad go happen. He had a pretty good run in Chicago. Nick Chubb would be interesting. That would be a guy that I would more than be willing to take a flyer on. Hell, fuck, I would even take a flyer on Gus Edwards at this point in time. But think about the fact that you truly are an injury away. As far as Dart goes with his intermediate passing games last year, his offensive line didn't give him time for the receivers core. We didn't have to. Well, actually, that's not true. The Giants, in reference to time in the pocket, gave Jackson Dart the 3rd most amount of time in the NFL. So that's actually not true. It is Jackson Dart's inability at times to be decisive with the football that caused a lot of those issues. Joe Spano says, good morning. Big James Stein says, good morning, Chip. Good morning, Chad. Hope all is well. Looking forward to today's show, Joe Spano. What do we got here? We also got Joe Ferry saying, these running backs aren't anything special, but they are at least of our problem. Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem, Joe. I don't think they're the least of our problems. I think, if anything, they are 2nd or 3rd. Everyone has been beating the drum about the wide receivers. The wide receivers, the wide receivers, the wide receivers. And I keep trying to explain to people, you need to include the tight end room in that wide receiver conversation. Because Isaiah Likely is not a true tight end. Isaiah Likely is that prototypical H-back. He played 276 snaps in the slot last year. And you also have I am not a huge fan of Theo Johnson, but Theo Johnson has immense talent. But like I said, Theo Johnson is Nuke LaLoosh. He's got $1 million arm and a 2-cent head. So, and that was one of his biggest complaints about him at Penn State. They thought that the tight end that just came out of Penn State was not as good as Theo Johnson. But Theo Johnson had more talent, but he was not known for putting his best talent forward. So when you still have a receiving core, and we're going to start it with Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Malachi Fields, Darnell Mooney, Juju Schuster-Smith. That's 5 guys. And Calvin Austin. That's 6 guys right there. And don't forget, adding into that receiving core is going to be Isaiah Likely and Theo Johnson. So you have 7 venerable targets without even going into Odell Beckham, Hodgkins, what's his name, Braxton, Jalen Hyatt, Bo Collins, Xavier Gibson. I still think Xavier Gibson could have an opportunity to make this team as a returner. I think it's going to kind of be between him and Calvin Austin, but I think you could use Calvin Austin more in the slot. I think the person right now that everyone keeps their hopes up and their fingers crossed about is always going to be Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham right now is on the unofficial depth chart. He's 7th. People were extolling his virtues in camp, mandatory mini camps, and I'm watching it like he looks slow. He looks slow coming out of the breaks. He looks slow going into the breaks. He doesn't have the same explosiveness coming off the ball. And I love it because someone said to me on X, well, it's practice. What do you want him to look like? I want him to look like he's an NFL caliber wide receiver still at 34 years old, coming off of massive injuries, hasn't played in 2 years. I need to see some explosiveness off the ball. I need to see something in his breaks. I need to see that he is still the same talent that he was 5 years ago, that people want to keep him on this roster. When I pretty much have 6 guys in my mind that are locked into this roster, and that's going to be Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Calvin Austin, Malachi Fields, Darnell Mooney, and Juju Schuster-Smith. I think those 6 guys right there give you a pretty venerable wide receiving core. And then, like I said, you pair that in with Isaiah Likely and Theo Johnson, you're not that bad off. You're actually pretty good. And from a pass blocking perspective, Andrew Thomas, John Runyon, JMS, Big Francis, and Jermaine Illuminor, while they are not the hogs of the 80s, while there's no Russ Grimm in that group that is going to Joe Jacoby that are going to push through that line in reference to the run game, but these guys are a venerable idea for a pass protecting 3-step drop, short offensive West Coast style that Matt Nagy runs. But then I look at the backfield, and this is where I still cringe. And there's another positional group that's even worse. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But I look at Cam Skattebo coming off an injury, only had 400 yards in 8 games. He had the one big game in Philadelphia, did not have 100 yards. And a lot of people have him penciled in as the number 1 running back coming off of a protruding bone out of his ankle. We have known and we have seen, even with the likes of Paulson Adebo, when the bone breaks and pops through, sometimes it takes a year or 2 to come back. And then you have Tyrone Tracy, who, like I said, Tyrone Tracy to me is an enigma. Now, listen, this is a guy that when he came out of college, only had less than a year of running back experience. He was not a running back through high school. He was not a running back through college. So he's still learning the position. But if you take a look at him statistically, people are like, he's got 600-700 yards. Yes, but a good majority of those yards come in the last 6 weeks of the season. Why? Devin Singletary, for a short period of time, is never going to be your bell cow back. He is going to be your third down back. He's going to be your short yardage guy. Eric Gray, Dante Miller, both waste of space. And then you have Damon Bankston. If you look at those guys, and you cannot honestly tell me that you do not fear an injury. Listen, right now in the wide receiving core, we have enough depth in the wide receiving core that if Malik Neighbors does not come back till week 3, like I keep hearing, you could still survive. You could plug in Odell, you could plug in Isaiah, you can plug in another guy, but you'll still have Darius Slayton, Calvin Austin, Malachi Fields, Darnell Mooney, and Juju Schuster-Smith. You will survive. Cam Skattebo to Tyrone Tracy goes down, and I see Eric Gray, Dante Miller, or Devin Singletary in the game. I'm stacking the fucking box. I'm saying, you know what? Second-year Jackson Dart, I want you to throw that fucking ball. I want to see what you got. Let's see what you got, Skippy. Giants Avenue, what's up, brother? Fred Taylor was a phenomenal natural runner. Fred Taylor does not get the credit for what Fred Taylor was in this league. Same with Maurice Jones-Drew. WK says, let me get this straight. We bring in 8 wide receivers in the offseason, not one NFL running back to at least take a look. Blows my fucking mind. What are you supposed to be? This is what I don't get. And like I said, I think sometimes coaches say something, but then of course they mean something totally different. I don't think this is going to be a run-first team. Even with you took Big Francis because he was the best offensive lineman available and he fell to you and you needed a guard. I still think this is going to be a Matt Nagy team. I think this is going to be the Matt Nagy Bears where he had Tyreek Cohen and Howard in the backfield. But here's the thing that's funny. None of these guys are Tyreek Cohen or Howard that we have. That's gotta give you a pause for concern. But you can still run this style offense and not have to worry as much. Because even also with those Bears teams, you had what did they have? They had, even under Mitchell Trubisky, you still had David Montgomery. None of these guys are David Montgomery. You also had Allen Robinson, who was the venerable wide receiver. So you had these wide receivers, you had these running backs, you had these guys that were quality positionally. So do we see any of these guys out there that we're going to look at and say, okay, yeah, these are the guys that fit this system? I don't know. Let's see. Maurice Jones-Drew was about as wide as he. That's why they called him a bowling ball. I think they want to draft Love at 5 and defense at 11, but that went haywire fast. You know what, Joe Ferry? It's interesting. We talked about Jordan Love coming to the Giants, and I thought Jordan Love to the Giants made sense. We did a video about how it made sense, and people were like, well, you keep changing your mind. I'm like, I'm not changing my mind. I got to change my mind with what the draft dictates. I think Love would have made sense. And in some regards, I do think Love might have been the Giants' pick. But then you have Tennessee do what they did, and then Jets do what they did, and Reese fall to you. I have no I have no qualms about that. Is there any Eric Gray safe zone, Tim? Tell me his potential. There is no potential. You've seen what Eric Gray is. I mean, think about it. Let's pull up Eric Gray's stats. Okay, here we go. Eric Gray in 34 NFL games. 34 NFL games. He's played in 34 NFL games. 31 carries, 79 yards, no touchdowns. You take a look at his success receiving. 16 receptions, 104 yards. So this guy, in 3 years between his receiving and his rushing, has under 200 yards. He averages 2.5 yards a carry. Do you want to talk about his yards after the carry? It's 0.2. Yeah, I'm calling that no. The new kid from New Mexico barely has any highlights because of the fact that he's got some issues fumbling. He's Turbo Miller size. He is not a in between the tackle runner. The only in between the tackle runner we have right now is Cam Skattebo. And this jury's still out on Cam Skattebo because he's only played in 8 NFL games and got hurt and only had 400 yards and did not have 100 yards in his entire starting opportunities. And Cam Skattebo at times has the we'll call it the Jackson Dart syndrome. And I watched this play in the Eagle game over and over again, and it was a highlight play. It's a highlight play. He went off tackle towards the sideline, ran into one Eagle, ran into another, bounced off both times, ran into a third Eagle, bounced back off times, ran into another Eagle that he ran into before, bounced back off, ran into another Eagle, and bounced forward. He gained a yard. And it was in the first quarter. And like Jackson Dart, you have to have an understanding that I need you in December and January. I don't need you getting a garbage yard in November in the first quarter that didn't even give us a first down. Brankston is an undrafted free agent, couldn't even win the starting job outright in New Mexico. He could be something, sure, but the reality is he's unlikely. Joe Spano, let's see here. Joe Ferry says, you and Spano got on an alert on SpaceX. Price discovered the wrong way. Actually, where was SpaceX today? I got on the SpaceX is actually up $2.64 today. I got on the spaceship rocket when it first popped. And I got on that at 160.95 on the beginning of June. And then I dropped it right when it hit 201.08 because I knew there was going to be a crash. I knew there was going to be a fall. And I'm not talking about the rocket. but I knew there was going to be a fall because there's always on these IPOs, there's always a big jump and then a fall. New York Giants Thunder Lane was Ron Dayne and Tiki Barber. They didn't run well, but Dayne was a bust. Didn't wear that lasted a season. Ron Dayne had too many yards. He had too many yards on his tires when he came out of college. I would have loved to have seen Ron Dayne if he did not take the load that he did. People forget Ron Dayne ran for 1,115 attempts in college. Ron Dayne was a 4-year starter. His first season as a freshman, he ran for 1,800, then 1,400, then 1,200, then 1,800. He had 295, 249, 268, and 303 carries in 43 games. Fathom that for a minute. Just for a minute. So let's see. He had 1,115 carries in 43 games in college. You divide that up. He was rushing 26 times a game on average for his career. That guy had no treads left on those motherfucking tires. He only had 31 receptions. But that guy had no treads. I would like to have seen it if it got a little better. Big James Williams says, hit the like button. Usually you can hear thunder, Deb. I didn't hear shit. I saw Derek Ward was better than any running back on this roster right now. He's the kind of third guy in a rotational piece. Derek Ward he came into the Giants at the right time. And he had the one big season, and then it's one of those things, especially when you're a guy. I mean, you're anything. You had your big year, you had your 1,000-yard year. I'm so good because I've had 1,600 yards in 2 seasons. I'm gonna take a big free agent contract and go to Tampa, where he played 14 games and only run for 409 yards. Then it was 315 in Houston, then 154. I remember when he went to Houston, I was like, oh, maybe he's gonna do something in Houston. But he was Derek Ward was one of those perfect 1-year wonders. Thank you for the correction, Tim. No, you're very welcome. James Stein says, okay, so we look at to bolster our running back room and who fits the Giants offense best. Here's the thing I don't know. I mean, are we a running team? Are we a bell cow team? Are we a team that's going to go out there and ring my bell, ring my bell? Are we going to ring the bell with something here? I don't know. I literally wish I could tell you. Because you have the words and philosophy out of John Harbaugh that we're going to be this running team. But then you see what we have and you look at the onus on the wide receiving core. And you're kind of like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't really mean we're going to be a running team, does it? James just wants says, big James Williams in his house. Spot our brother. Jeffrey says, I remember his second year Ron Dayne getting tackled on a fistful of jersey, and I knew it was over. Ron Dayne, and Ron Dayne had a slight renaissance in that last 2 seasons in Houston. We ran for 600 and 700 yards. But that first year with the Giants, 228 carries, 770 yards. He only averaged 3.4 yards a carry. It's a Trent Richardson moment. Then he comes back with 690 at 3.8. Then he comes back at 428 at 3.4. The only time he went over 5 yards a carry or even 4 yards a carry was in Denver. Was at that 5.1. And then he kind of had that mini renaissance at 29 years old. But for a guy, he had less carries. He only had 983 carries in the pros for 3,722 yards in 96 games. He went from carrying the ball 26 times a game on average to like 12 in his professional career. I feel bad for Ron Dayne. Problem on the Giants: first, secondary, second is running back room, third is the offensive line. I don't think the offensive line is a problem yet. I still think you got to figure out what JMS has got. Tell me what you got, what you really, really want. I don't know what JMS is. because JMS at times looks putrid. We know he's going to get bullied, especially in Philadelphia. And I think now in Dallas, he'll get bullied, especially Rashawn Gary. I think Jermaine Illuminor is going to give you the same thing he gave you last year. Not much in the run support, but he's going to be an above average pass blocker, and he's going to give you continuity. I think Big Francis and Andrew Thomas are the two wild cards, because I don't know if either one of them. First of all, Francis is a rookie. We got to make sure that Thomas stays healthy. Everyone with the UGG on Ron Dane. Tim has an eye for talent, that's for sure, except when it comes with the offensive line. Listen, I always tell people there's one problem I have, and that's picking people on the offensive line. I always laugh about that. Let's see here. Yeah, he's available as well, but I just don't see him filling the giant needs. He reminds me too much of Tyrone Tracy. Salute to the chat. Joe Ferry says all these running backs you guys are talking about are in their 30s and have off-field shit. That's the problem. Do you find a way to make a trade? Is there a team out there with a plethora of running backs? I can't think of one. Does anyone think of one? I mean, can we think of one that can we think of a guy out there, not a free agent, but a guy out there that you potentially see value for on the back end? Maybe he's the third guy somewhere, but do we see any value? Like, to me, Brian Robinson, who went over, where'd he go? He went over to Atlanta. He was a guy that I looked at like, okay, he could be something. He could have been something to Giant, and he got really nothing. He got a nothing deal. You know, he's not going to get traded now. But it's just like you have all these guys, and it's just like, do we have, like I said, if you have 3 or 1, you got 1 or nothing. Joe Ferry says, I love the backfield, the pettiness of reversing the hyphenated name. I like hyphenated names too. Let's see here. Let's see here. All these Eric Gray's mentions. Deb's trying to change back super chat. Charge backer super chats. Philosopher, what's up, brother? Good morning, Tim. I'm concerned with the defensive sitting on our wide receivers' routes without a lack of a vertical passing attack. But you have a vertical passing attack. Isaiah Likely is a vertical guy. Darius Slayton, for everyone that hates Darius Slayton, he's a vertical guy. Darnell Mooney is a vertical guy. You have a vertical passing attack. It's just going to be, will the likes of Jackson Dart be able to find him? That's what I think you need to look at the most. Let's see here. Good morning, Slider. What's up, brother? W. Keith said, do you think the Giants have much faith in the running back room today not to bring in someone? I'm literally kind of at a loss with the thought processes of the Giants' philosophy in regards to the running back room. I got to admit, I'm at a loss. I would have thought they would have put something together and said, hey, listen, this makes sense if we just bring in like I said, we were so concerned about bringing people in reference to the wide receiver room. We're not thinking, hey, you know what? You need to bring people in regards to the running back room. Let's see here. Charlotte Hornets have traded Miles Bridges, 2009 first rounder, 2000 second rounder, Phoenix Suns for Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and a first round pick, tells the sources. Nothing Nick related though. It's Mitchell Robinson's not coming back. Mitchell Robinson's not coming back. As much as people want Mitchell Robinson to come back, Mitchell Robinson's not coming back. We don't have anywhere close to the cash to bring Mitchie the kid back. And honestly, I have a problem paying a guy 19 to 20 million that plays 45 to 50 games a year. And then you literally break your hand. Then you literally break your hand just before the playoffs. I don't know. I'm just saying it. Let's see here. The Giants and the New York Knicks are the Giants in New York are kind of fending for a superstar. Yeah, we are. How about Tim for the fourth running back? Better quads than Eric Gray. True. Viewers dropping off the stream, all with all this Eric Gray talk. All Turbo Miller can do is catch dump off passes. Tell me you're not wrong. Let's see. Your slider says, Joe, don't forget Tiki Barber's quads didn't fully develop until he got called from their head coach, and our running back coach Ingram worked with him. Tiki was a fumbler who put up good numbers with Fossil. Tiki was the fumbler, and Tiki was a guy that gave full credit where credit was due when it came to Tom Coughlin saving and fixing his career. And then all of a sudden, he bashes Tom Coughlin. Tim said he was going to be the number one quarterback at Matt Tipp's camp because the NEL deals paid more than FanDuel. I guess that's fake news on True Social. Actually, I'm actually trying to go to Furman, Joe Ferris. If you're going to get it right, Joe Ferris, I'm trying to go to Furman as a safety on an NIL deal because Furman is the number one liberal arts college in the South. And if Jackson Dart can throw 6-7 touchdowns against Furman, they're going to need some help. Obviously, Harbaugh's waiting for the running backs at the cutdown. That's the only thing I can think of. Not wrong on Turbo Miller, Joe Ferris. His career reminds me of a practice squad player for a reason. Remember all the hype around Turbo last preseason? He ran for 2.9 yards a carry. The Challenger Rocket. You know, it's funny. I have to get a new rear badge for the Challenger. And that's the only Challenger I talk about. The person that owned the car before me removed the rear badge, which I don't understand, and which I really don't get because this car, there's only 331 of these cars in existence. And this motherfucker who had the car before me took a lot of the badges off the car. Now, the 1320 Angry Bee, like I said, there's 331 of these. So it's not easy to get the replacement badges. So you literally have to call up Dodge, give them your VIN number, and they will send you they will pay, of course, pay for it. They will get you a badge. But it's like, well, holy shit, you know how much this thing fucking costs? Luckily, the one that just says Challenger on the back is easy to replace. Pretty much Turbo Miller, straight line runner, if you want to be nice and say that. Turbo Miller has the contact balance of a baby deer. That's not good. Slider says Ron Dane had no patience. Tell on his face a lot, but like Tim said, too many attempts. Ron Dane had way too many attempts. I got to throw the link in the chat because I wanted Joe Ferries to come on. So let's not Joe Ferries. Of course I would have Joe Ferries come on. I wanted to have Joe Spano come on. So Joe, I'm putting the link in the chat there, brother. I got to put the link in the chat. There he is. Running back lead is a luxury. It doesn't make you if you can't block. All good should help these guys. Good old lunch help these guys. So the last two Super Bowl winners both had star running backs. The disvaluing of the running backs is swinging the other way right now. Let's see here. What's up? What's up, Albert? Going to Arizona. Arizona could move on from Connor. Isn't Connor still hurt? Tracy is good, according to Paul Dionato. Told me he was a wide receiver in college, but told me he was a wide receiver. He was a wide receiver in college. I don't, Paul got mad at me because I told him he couldn't come on the show. I'm just saying. Can Hakaporti give you most of what Robinson gave you last season? More durability, not a lot. The only problem was there, Hakaporti. We don't have the money to sign him either right now. If you're not going to go a little bit under that second apron, we don't have enough money to sign Ariel Hakaporti. When we got Muhammad Diawara, I was shocked because he still went 2.5. Even bring back Alvarez. We still gave a $45,000 a year raise over the next 4 seasons, so we're still gonna have to work on that money as well. I mean, Jordan Clarkson, unless he wants to come back at a veteran minimum, is not coming back. We still have the mid-level exception. Ugh, can't talk today. But you want to probably try to use most of that on Landry Shamet. So it's gonna be interesting. Furman Liberal Arts College, pretty sure it's a troll, Tim. No, it's number 1 liberal arts college in the country. No, I'm not gonna put a Hellcat badge. Not gonna put a Hellcat badge. Here's the problem with the Hellcat. The Hellcat, the 1320 is the same engine as the Hellcat. He's the exact same engine. But the 1320 is the only true, what they referred to as legal street racer. Joseph Spano, the Spano Spot, brought to you by who? The mighty FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com, the number one sportsbook in America. I don't know if Joe can hear me. Blink twice.
I sure can, Timmy. What's going on, my brother?
Make sure it wasn't a hostage situation. Well, you know what's going on right now. If you go to FanDuel, that's FanDuel.com, number one sportsbook in America. The New York Football Giants are still rocketing up the charts in reference to what their odds are in making the Super Bowl. They were at plus 6,500 yesterday. I Bleav we're still at the same pace. We leapfrogged. Yeah, we're still at plus 6,500. We leapfrogged Joe, the Carolina Panthers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're just a hiccup behind the Minnesota. You know what's funny? The Minnesota Vikings and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are over the Giants at plus 5,000 in regards to making and winning the Super Bowl, with the Giants being at plus 6,500. I kind of think, in my opinion, Joe, my humble opinion, I think if the Giants figure it out in different areas positionally, I think in what the issues that the Vikings have at the quarterback position, I think the Giants could probably have the same record as the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you look at some of these odds, the Giants really, when you look at it, they're in a cluster with a whole bunch of teams that are going to win somewhere between 6 and 9 games.
Well, they're in a cluster.
A third of the league.
They're in a cluster between, let's see here, between we'll start the Atlanta Falcons, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Carolina Panthers, the Giants, the Vikings, and the Vikings and the Buccaneers, and the Colts are above the Giants. Like I said, I don't know, man. I maybe I'm crazy with thinking about the Giants having the opportunity to be better than Minnesota, because Minnesota's got some talent, but that quarterback position it could be the death of that team.
The quarterback position is awful, and as we've talked about on this program any number of times, as your quarterback goes, so goes the performance of your team. The Giants have the edge there. I think what you alluded to at the beginning, the Giants have more unanswered questions in other places, and a few more things a lot has to break right. We've talked about it. We've seen some people in our chat that talk about, the Giants could win 10, 11 games. Yeah, the Giants could win 10 or 11 games, but man, you're asking for an awful lot. You're asking for every single move to work out and every single thing to break right and not have another major injury the entire year. That's a lot to ask for. There's uncertainty around the Giants. That's why your 7-win prediction kind of rings true. That factors in, okay, some of the things that we hope go right are going to go right, and some are going to go wrong, and the quarterback's going to be solid. 7-8 wins right there if that happens.
The thing about what you were saying about the Giants going different directions in different ways, and there are going to be things, and this is what I think some fans are missing. There are going to be things that we're not expecting, Joe, that are going to go right. They're going to be things. There's going to be issues. There's going to be stuff that we're going to be like, it's going to come out of left field, and it's going to be something that works out. And there's going to be stuff that we think is going to be the saving grace of this team, but then potentially could be to the detriment of this team. I saw the video. I got an email from A to Z Sports, because I guess I subscribe to them, and they're talking about how the Giants' big three, in reference to their pass rush, could potentially terrorize the league and turn the entire Giants season around. Did we not hear the same thing last year?
We heard the exact same thing last year, and it didn't happen.
That's what I'm saying. So as something, and that was something that was we had the most money put into the defensive line last year. Most salary cap allocated to the defensive line last year. And we had one of the worst defensive lines in the league. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what people need to understand. We look at the wide receiver. There was a panic for the wide receiver room, but even before signing Odell, I was like, I think we're okay. And I think from what we're running systematically with Matt Nagy. And again, I got to keep reminding people, Isaiah Likely plays in the slot a lot. Mm-hmm. He lines up on the outside a lot. it's not like we have this guy that's just going to be strictly a tight end. You also have Theo Johnson. So I got to combine those. I don't combine the wide receiver room sometimes separate from the tight end room because their responsibility is all the same. Block downfield and catch the ball.
Yeah.
And try to score.
I guess you've got to look at it as not wide receivers and tight ends, but a volume of quality pass catchers that aren't running backs, that are running the same routes and being lined up and deployed the same way. The Giants have enough of those. Even before the rash of signings, they had enough. They had plenty of numbers of capable NFL professional wide receivers. Without a healthy Neighbors, do they definitely lack a star? Yeah, they absolutely did. But bringing in those 3 guys didn't change that. They still, without a healthy Neighbors, lack star power at the wide receiver position. That doesn't change. But what they do have is they have healthy, capable, quality NFL bodies that could run routes, get open, catch the football, move the chains. That's enough to help develop your quarterback and make it clear that wide receiver is not a pressing need. When you factor in the tight end room and you also factor in that the Giants are probably going to run less 3 wide receiver sets than most teams in the league. Giants have plenty of depth at the receiver position, and the running back is the running back room is definitely a more pressing issue, just from the standpoint of everybody's making Cam Skattebo sound like a certainty, but Malik Neighbors is not. That's interesting. Malik Neighbors, we might not see Malik Neighbors till week 6. He might start on the pup, this and that. But Cam's fine because he took a few handoffs in an 11-on-11 team drill, in shorts and a T-shirt, and he did a backflip at a softball game. Well, that's a lot different than actually running the ball in an NFL football game in the regular season. So while we're hopeful, Cam Skattebo is definitely not a certainty.
There was a player that we signed last year who, during his rehabilitation, did a backflip. And every Giant fan was like, oh my God, we got to get this guy. And that gentleman's name was Paulson Adebo. And we all kind of know what Paulson Adebo's first season had at hand. But Joe, with John Harbaugh, he hasn't really come out and say it. He kind of implies it, that we're going to be a run-first team. He's never really put in the edict that we are going to be what we were or what I was the last couple of years with Derrick Henry. But he's kind of alluded to that. And it's kind of weird because it's kind of an interesting situation that you talk that way, but then you go in and bring in Matt Nagy. You talk about being a run-first team, but you go heavy in free agency, in the draft, at the wide receiver position. You talk about being a run-heavy team, but you go and get a tight end who is more of an H-back who doesn't have the pedigree as a blocker. I love when people say that. I love when other content creators go, he's an inline blocker. Well, that's what a tight end is, either way. But he's not very good at it.
Right.
I could be an inline blocker too, but it doesn't mean I'm good at it. But you have all these. You have John Harbaugh saying this, but if you look at the construction of the roster, it tells me that they are going to be a short passing West Coast style offense just by everything they've done, not what John Harbaugh says.
Well, it's interesting. I think they're going to be a lot more balanced than people expect. The Greg Roman factor can't be underestimated. He was brought in to put together that power gap running scheme. The effort to get larger, more physical gap scheme offensive linemen, and I think we're going to see that continue over the coming years. But
honestly, outside of getting Francis, we didn't do that because we have 4 of the 5 starters returning.
Right. That's a fair point. I mean,
Francis and all the guys outside of Andrew Thomas are pass block first guys.
Absolutely. No, you're right. It's a work, and we talked about this. There's a lot of areas of work in progress. But you can see where they're going, and a lot of the reserves and if you look at all the reserves and minimum level free agent guys and depth guys they brought in, they're all gap power guys.
Yes.
Any new acquisitions are all gap power guys. There's no more zone finesse blockers. We're stuck with Runyon probably this year.
Just our starters.
What?
Just our starters.
Well, yeah, it's going to transition out over the course of
this is year one.
Right. So I think for this year, while there's going to be some stress on running the football, I think a lot of what you talk about with Matt Nagy and how he uses the pass game as an extension of the running game, I think you're going to see more of that than a lot of people think, just because the offensive line is not set to dominate in a gap power scheme. No. They don't have
not even close
a lot of these run blockers. They also, and you know this, you played football. Gap power schemes do a lot of pulling.
Mm-hmm.
Who amongst these interior offensive linemen can pull? None of them. That's a huge problem.
Well, no, that's not true, because we spoke to someone in Green Bay before we got Jon Runyan, and that person told me directly that Jon Runyan is a above average pass blocker. Just don't use him as a pulling guard because he will trip over his own feet.
So they have nobody who can pull. Now Noah is new to guard. There's not a big resume of a guy who pulled a lot. They've basically got to teach him how to be a pulling guard.
Well, they got to teach him before they do that. They got to teach him how to be a guard.
Right. No, fair point. So they do have some issues as far as having the personnel in place amongst the guys that are going to start to actually run this gap power scheme. So I don't think you're going to see quite as heavy a dose of it as a lot of people think. I just think there's some issues here, and it's what we've alluded to in several of our conversations. The New York Giants are a work in progress. It is going to take another draft and another free agency period to get this team built truly in the vision that John Harbaugh wants.
No, I agree. I agree. I agree. Whoops, people keep texting me there. I agree 100%. Oh, and to Joe Ferry's, actually, it is the same engine. The Hellcat is actually a 6.2 liter supercharged engine. Superchargers, you could still have the supercharger on and off the engine. You got to remember that. So, and you have to remember that the Dodge 1320 is actually a 6.4 liter V8. So it is the same engine without the supercharger. And there's actually more per foot torque in the Dodge 1320 than it is in the Hellcat. So just want to, if we're going to talk about cars, let's get it right.
Those cars that sound like a spaceship coming down the street.
I always love my car because when my exhaust gets a little damp, if you get a little damp just in the exhaust because of rain or something, it's like 3 times as loud. And I live in the middle of nowhere, and I know my neighbor who's all the way down there probably hears it every time I start. Every time I start the car. So.
I live in Long Island suburbia, Tim, and you hear this more when you're out walking the dog than anything else.
I always love, especially when you're backing up. You're backing, and I always love it because I always go to my, what the fuck is that?
It's a spaceship coming down. The Jetsons are coming.
Somebody's car coming down. But let's stay on the Giants here because I think this is where it's going to get interesting. I just, and maybe you can make some sense into this though. Maybe if you are the Giants, you're constructing a team and you take a look at your positional groups.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would consider like the defensive line, and we'll combine the linebackers and the defensive line into one positional group. I think that's your bet. That's your best bet. That is going to be hopefully your thought process is that's going to be your core. I would then probably go the wide receiver room. I would probably then go just at a potential your quarterback room. And then I would probably go tied your secondary and your running back room. The two areas of most need for the Giants this last 2 seasons and going into this year have been the running backs and your defensive secondary. Mm-hmm. And those are the 2 spots on this team that were kind of neglected.
it can't argue with you. I mean, they tried to throw some bodies at the secondary room, but they're bodies that haven't performed well. So, you've obviously got issues there. And now with the running back room, you could see what John Harbaugh was trying to do. He was looking.
Hold on, wait a minute. I got to sit up for this because you need to explain to me what he's trying to do, because he has a running back coming back off an injury with a protruding bone. And we've learned from Paulson Skattebo and other players that's a tough injury to come back from. Yep. You have a guy going into his third year who was a former wide receiver who, for some unknown reason, doesn't turn on the gas until the last 4 weeks of the season. You have Devin Singletary, who to me is just washed up, and you have Dante Miller and you have Eric Gray, who are both a waste of spaces. And you went out and got a guy in New Mexico who was basically Turbo Miller, but with a fumbling problem. What was John Harbaugh thinking?
Okay, here, if let's go all the way back to free agency and let's kind of work through this. Here's what I saw. I saw a guy who wanted to add a bell cow to the top of this running back room.
Yes.
And when he failed to do so, he wasn't going to add lesser bodies that he didn't think could make an impact. And he passed. Right, wrong, or otherwise, that's what he did, thinking, okay, I've got these three guys. They're all capable pros, and I will have a rotation. I've had success building running attacks without household names at the running back position. I've built running attacks where Gus Edwards was my leading rusher and guys of that ilk. So he's thinking for one season, I can get away and start putting my blueprint on this team and start running the football with this core. Obviously, I'm one injury away from tragedy, and then I got to go get somebody off their couch, which I think is the other part of the plan.
Now, you bring up Gus Edwards, and I actually like Gus Edwards, and Gus Edwards had a pretty good career in Baltimore. And he was a bigger in between the tackles back at 6'1", 240 pounds. Mm-hmm. Who on this team is Gus Edwards? Because I think Gus Edwards gets. I'm not saying you're disparaging him, but I think Gus Edwards was a much better pro than the fact that John Harbaugh just said, I'm going to have a running back committee. Because Gus Edwards, in his time with Baltimore, which was I think 6 years, I think he only started 32 games out of a possible 80. So it's not even like he was a starter, but who on this team is Gus Edwards?
They're looking at Cam Skattebo as their Gus Edwards. Okay. They obviously have more confidence in him right now than maybe we do sitting here. I mean, I can't read John's mind. I can't read the organization's mind. I can only go by what I see them doing and not doing. I saw them take multiple stabs and have multiple hope at trying to get bell cows. They struck out on Kenneth Walker because they weren't willing to go to that price.
Yeah, we're going to go that price range.
Right. Love didn't fall to them, so that didn't happen. Clearly, they didn't love any other running backs in the draft enough to waste draft capital on them. I tend to agree with them. And what they feel they have is a committee of guys in the ilk that they've had before they brought in Derrick Henry, where they had a stable of solid guys. Some were pretty good, some were okay, but they had 3 to 4 of them that they could all trust. The Giants here believe, whether you agree or don't, I think John Harbaugh believes that he has 3 guys here in Singletary, Tracy, and Skattebo that he can trust to lead a quality running attack and get them through this season. Clearly, in 2027 draft, I believe in either the first or second round, they are addressing running back. They will put a bell cow at the top of this rotation, and the chips will fall where they may as far as the guys underneath.
Now, you had low cost options in free agency. You had someone like AJ Dillon, who went to the Panthers for $1.4 million. Mm-hmm. I thought someone like Brian Robinson Jr., former 49er, former Washington Commander, at $2.5 million for someone like the Giants would have been a steal. Because you're talking to Brian Robinson Jr. is one of those guys that was a guy that understood his position and still gave you 3 consecutive years or over 700 yards when he was only carrying the ball 170 something times a game. So you had guys available at low end costs that would have made sense to bring in for the Giants. Why do you think the Giants avoided people like that?
I just don't think they saw those guys as upgrades over what they had and were unwilling to spend anything more than the minimum on any of these guys because they didn't believe they were a significant upgrade over Singletary. I would have even looked at a Chris Rodriguez. You want to talk about you're going to run a gap power scheme?
That's right.
There's a guy who can deal with having an inconsistent workload. When you put him out there, he produces. And then if you put him on the bench and cool his ass for weeks at a time, it doesn't matter. When you call his number, he's going to go out there and he's going to give you yards and he's going to give you touchdowns. I would have thought a guy like that would have been a good fit. I definitely agree with you. Some fortification at the lower end of this room for modest money like they did with the receivers might have been a better way to go as far as allocating your resources. Obviously, there's something here that we don't see that John Harbaugh does because it looks to me like it was either get a bell cow this year or I'm running it back with the guys that I got here.
Actually, Joe Ferry's the off the line, if you're talking on the short, the Hellcat, the 1320 is actually faster than the Hellcat. Off the line. Just again.
Well, you don't have to wait for the turbo to spool. Superchargers don't spool; they're pretty instantaneous. I'm not going to get in.
Exactly. We're not going to get into that. But off the line, actually, the 1320, which is referred to why it's the 1320 because it is the fastest street legal car within the first 1,320 feet, which is the quarter mile, which is why it's referred to as the 1320.
Yeah, Joe, stop pissing on Tim's cars. Tim loves his ride. Leave it alone.
I love all my cars. I love all my cars, but I just
Joe Ferry.
when people don't understand, and I've actually because there is a airfield down here, I've had the 1320 up against the Hellcat, and we took them off the line like it was no tomorrow. So just gonna say,
not to say anything, Joe, but Tim wins again.
I win.
I win.
I literally won from both perspectives. Because the built-in computerized line lock on the 1320, which is only available in the 1320, gives you the advantage. But we're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into all the computer stuff.
So, Tim, do you kind of buy what I'm putting out there? I mean,
no,
it doesn't look like.
No, I'm not.
You don't buy what I'm putting out there, but do you buy that as what John Harbaugh is seeing?
I think Slider said it best right here because we use this phrase all the time. Joe, don't piss down Tim's leg and tell him it's raining. Because I don't buy it.
I get you, Strider, but the realities are I can only go by what John did and what he didn't do. He went big game hunting. When the big game wasn't available, he didn't add to this room.
But who did he? I mean, we all knew we were not getting Kenneth Walker. We all knew this. I mean, I think any astute football fan knew you were not going to dedicate that much resources on a 26, 27-year-old running back and we've said this before, you have to look at this and this was the whole Dexter Lawrence thing. You have to look at this from the perspective, are these guys still going to be good when the Giants are finally competitive for an extended period of time? So we all knew we weren't getting Kenneth Walker. At least I was
kicking the tires on it. It wasn't going to happen, but that he was interested for sure.
It didn't make any fucking sense. And Big Dash, you're right. You're not convincing me on this. You cannot change because I look, and I think one of my biggest issues is, Joe, and maybe that's the problem I have, is I don't look at this from a Giant perspective. I look at this as a football, just a football perspective. You got a guy coming off a major injury who was injured after Malik Neighbors, who literally had emergency surgery because when the bone protrudes through the skin, you have emergency surgery. They do not wait. There is no waiting for that. And players who have had this similar style injury have either never come back or are never the same player that they were. And Cam Skattebo, if we are being honest from a football perspective, has 400 yards in 8 games, did not have 100 yards in any of those games, and was a guy that is supposed to be this bowling ball, short yard bouncing guy. And I've said this before. I use the Eagle game as an example. He took that one run, went off tackle, hit the first eagle, bounce backwards, hit the second eagle, bounce backwards, went 40 yards, hit the third eagle, bounce backwards, hit the other eagle, bounce forward, 1 more yard, bounce. He had a highlight on a 1 yard run on third down when it was like 3rd and 7. And that was a highlight because of the fact that he is not John Riggins. He is not Derrick Henry. He is not that type of guy. And teams are now going to figure out how to, you already got 8 games of film on Cam Skattebo. They're going to understand, okay, this is what Cam Skattebo likes to do. And instead of tackling him high, Joe, especially on a power back, what do?
Go get him low, baby.
You go get him low. You go get him low and take him down because he does not have the speed and the capability to bounce it to the outside. You go watch him in Arizona. That's just not him.
No,
and then you have Tyrone. Then you have Tyrone Tracy, who has only been a true running back for say 2 years. And like I said, Joe, I have never seen this on a player. And maybe you have. Maybe you can remember a guy. But I can't. For 2 consecutive seasons, this guy doesn't turn it on until like week 14.
Yeah,
and then, I mean, could you explain? I mean, do you remember a guy that would rush for like 50 yards, 40 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards, and then all of a sudden, like in week 14, he's this different back?
No, but I'll also say this: when you're looking at a team like the Giants that have been out of it the last couple of years, and you're getting these late season numbers from a team that's out of it playing other teams that are out of it, are pretty empty numbers. They're not really a great indication of what you are. Those early season numbers, when you're still in it, playing other teams that are still in it, they're a better indication of what you are. So the optimism around this room, I don't necessarily share it. You asked me why John's doing what he's doing.
Oh no, no, but you were taking the John Harbaugh perspective. So
I'm taking his perspective.
That's why I was asking.
Right. He obviously likes these guys better than what was out there and didn't feel like paying for some of the guys that we mentioned, didn't want to pay any level of premium, and he was going to run it back with what he had.
Now, here's the thing I want to get with Tyrone Tracy for a second. This is what yards per carry starting week 1, 2.4, 3.0, 4.1, 1.5, 3.9, 3.6, 5.1, 4.6, 3.1, 3.6. And then the last 4 weeks of the season, 4.7, 4.4, 4.4, 5.7. And to your point, we played Washington, Minnesota, Las Vegas, and Dallas.
Yeah. Games meant nothing to us, meant nothing to them. They're worthless. It's like you've talked about. There are exhibition game players. You know, they look great. But you watch it and you know it's not going to translate. So I'm not telling you Tyrone Tracy is garbage. He's a decent number 2. He's a decent number 2 back who's growing as a running back because he's new to the position. But let us not forget he was moved to running back because he had athletic skills and was Edward Scissorhands as a receiver. He had a lot of drops in college as a receiver. So he wasn't.
And that's why people don't understand. Someone asked me, how come he doesn't, receive better? How come he's not more on in the pass game? How come he only had 30
wide receiver?
Because that's what I said. Someone was like, well, he only had 36 receptions for 200 yards. I was like, because he wasn't a very good wide receiver in college, which is the reason why they moved him to running back.
Right. Which is always funny. A lot of times when they have these guys that are position converts, and you look at the scouting report and they automatically put them as a plus in the passing game. It's the same thing with the kid that came out of Clemson this last draft, Adam Randall. Yeah. Well, they moved him from wide receiver to running back, so he's an automatic plus in the passing game. He was a brutal wide receiver. Brutal. He had a ton of drops. So it's a lot of the same issues. Skattebo's actually the better receiving back out of the backfield than Tracy. I better hands. He runs better routes. He does everything better, except for actually pick up the blitz. But as a receiver out of the backfield, Skattebo is the far better player. Tracy's developing as a runner and has more explosiveness with a little bit of power and wiggle. It's not a great running back room.
But here's something you just brought up. I think people. And I was going to bring this up later, but this is something also people kind of forget about the running back room. Yes, it's about getting yards. And I think Tyrone Tracy is this guy that if you look at him, he has the ability to go long. He has the ability to extend the play and give you that big burst. Yeah, he does 100%, but he doesn't do it as much as you would think he would for a guy that has that wiggle and that speed. But to your point though, and looking at this running back room, who is your blocking back? And don't say, people are going to say Patrick Ricard. Patrick Ricard only plays in about 38% of the snaps the last 3 seasons. So he's not going to be, he's going to be more of that extra offensive lineman. He's going to be more of that big tight end. Yeah, you're going to line him up in the backfield at times, but also at times, if you have Patrick Ricard on a 3rd and long in the backfield by himself, you kind of know what he's going to do. Yeah. You know what he's going to, as the league, you're going to know what he's going to be in there for. But who is, I mean, we bashed Saquon Barkley about his blocking ability, but Saquon Barkley to me, especially towards the latter half of his Giant career, was not a great blocker, but he was a willing blocker. And there's a difference. Who is the blocking back in reference to pass blocking out of this group?
The blitz pickup guy. It's Singletary, as scary as that is. And
there we go.
And that's why, if you noticed, despite the fact that Devin's in some ways on his last legs, on a lot of those 3rd down obvious passing situations, you saw neither Cam Skattebo before he got hurt or Tyrone Tracy in the game. You saw Devin Singletary in the game because they knew that he could actually pick up the blitz and keep the quarterback from getting killed, regardless of if he could do anything else or not. So, and here's kind of where I'm getting at with the running back room. One of the things that we could say about the Giants offense, surprisingly under Brian Dable and Mike Kafka, the boy wonders and the boy geniuses, was the fact that our offense was not any less predictable than when Jason Garrett was here. If we're being honest, if we're truly being honest, I mean, the best quarterback season was 3,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. I mean, so predictability has always been an issue for the Giants. So when you have guys in your defense, in your backfield, your running back room, that, one guy's a wide receiver, one guy's supposed to be your short yardage back, and one guy is your blocking back. How are you not developing predictability by saying, okay, when Devin Singletary's in, the Giants are going to do X. When Patrick Ricard's in, the Giants are going to do X. When Cam Skattebo is in, the Giants are going to do X. How are you going to, as an offensive coordinator for the Giants, kind of mix it up so when someone sees a package, when a smart defensive coordinator sees a package coming in for the Giants, they don't immediately know what the play is going to be? The scary part is there's no obvious solution short of perhaps putting your quarterback at mortal risk. You might have to,
and that's where I was going, but keep going.
It's either that or you're gonna. I mean, there's really that's where you're at. Your unpredictability is going to come with putting your quarterback at risk. You're going to have to hope these guys develop into pass blockers. Skattebo was a rookie last year who played 6 games, so he may yet develop the ability to be a blitz pickup guy. I think with Tracy, what you've seen from is what you're going to get from as far as blitz pickup. He's going to be far from great in that area. So your lack of predictability or your desire to avoid predictability is going to have to come with necessary risks. There's no way around it, which is a problem because what's the thing that keeps quality running backs off the field? The inability to pick up the blitz.
And fumbling,
yeah. Fair point.
But to your point, and this is where I was kind of going, I saw a short clip on Chode Sports saying we are robbed of the connection of Dart and neighbors. We deserve more. Yeah, I had no doubt. But we are also robbed. Oh, yeah, Dart threw the hospital ball. Dart did throw the hospital ball. It's just, no one's ever going to. I've watched that play a million. Slider, I watched that play a million times, and I agree. I mean, that was there. People have this misconception, Joe, that a hospital ball is when you throw someone into contact. When you leave, I always love that with people because it's always these 20-year-olds are like, well, a hospital ball is when you throw your wide receiver into contact. No, a hospital ball can be where you put the ball in the wrong position and the wide receiver has to make this contorted effort to come back, jump midair, tear his ACL in the air, and then come down when if you would have thrown the ball 7 yards ahead of the wide receiver over his right inside shoulder, if he even couldn't catch it, it wouldn't matter. He would have just run in stride and there wouldn't have been a problem. That's referred to as a hospital ball. So we're not going to keep getting into that.
We're not going to litigate the hospital ball,
but we're not going to litigate the hospital ball again.
Right. But, it's a hospital ball because by definition, a hospital ball is any ball you throw that as a result of your poor throw lands the player on the receiving end in the hospital.
Just like the Cam Skattebo play. That was a hospital ball.
Yeah.
You throw it to the inside of Skattebo instead of to the outside where he's got to contort and come back. It's ball placement, and you threw it into coverage, and then it wasn't a hip drop tackle. People got to get away from that. But that's if you throw that pass to the outside of Cam Skattebo, not the inside. We could be debating how great of a season Cam Skattebo had at this point in time and how the Giants didn't need a running back.
We still don't know what Cam is. We saw glimpses. We saw some infectious, and him and Dart bring an intangible quality. Well, intangible qualities are great, but you still got to be able to play.
Right.
That's the realities. So the energy and the infectious nature and all that wonderful stuff that people love to go crazy about, that's all great. You still got to be able to play football. You got to be able to put up numbers, and you got to be able to move the football, and you got to be able to win games. So all this infectious stuff is great. And we still have to see what Cam is. Everybody forgets he ran for 4.1 yards a carry, which in today's NFL is below the league average. So for all the PFF, he had a great year in his limited opportunities. The numbers were not great. They were okay. There were some highlight moments, but there was a lot that wasn't great. So let's see what we really have. Over 16 games or 17 games. Injury, believe it or not, I'm not as concerned about. I had a similar injury myself, but I slipped on ice going to work. But I had the dislocation and the whole thing. One of the keys.
When you're, I would love this story, but when you're running this, unless the story ends with you're running between the tackles, going right at Jordan Davis, then it's
definitely not that. I was
not gonna be the same thing.
Long retired. It was the early years of my radio career. I was doing a morning drive shift. It had rained the night. It had rained the night before, and it iced up.
Hold on, I gotta drop in your attorney.
Okay, good.
I see you philosopher. Hopefully you are not driving and watching at the same time.
So
I'm a very responsible driver, Tim.
In most states, that's not. You should know this. In most states, that's not legal.
If you don't tell, I won't.
I'll try not to tell because nobody's hitting the like button today. So if you hit the like button, hit the like button. Philosopher, what's up, my brother? I haven't talked to you in a little while.
Yeah, man. I hope everything's good with you. And Joe, I hope you doing good as well. Y'all looking good.
Good, Philosopher, baby. What's happening, man?
Just chilling, man. Doing my thing. I'm out on road like always. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about what you guys were talking about with the running back room. And when I left that message about the passing attack, I think they're both obviously symbiotically connected like everything is in football. But I think the issue is a lack of explosiveness with the run game mixed with the fact that this offense is asking for a lot of short crossing type of routes. It's not designed to be particularly vertical. It's designed to be more like horizontal. But I think the issue with that is that you kind of squeeze your offense. And I think the only real vertical dependable threat that we have right now is our tight end in the form of what's his name? Not Theo Johnson, the other guy, Likely.
Yeah, Isaiah
Likely. So I think you're kind of putting yourself in a situation where the NFL is already going to make adjustments in the way that they've defended Dart. And they were already doing that towards the end of the season. And you saw that the good defenses were actually doing a really good job of defending him. Namely, if you look at the game against the
Minnesota Vikings and the Eagles. Well, we lost the philosopher there. He's broken up. But to his point, yes, it was the Eagles game and the Vikings game that I'm not going to say exposed Jackson Dart, because I'm not just thinking you're really exposing a rookie, but introduced him to the fact that once your 12 play card is off the books and you now have to have a quality offensive coordinator that's going to make adjustments for his rookie, which they never did. Which is kind of what happened in that Minnesota game and that second Philadelphia game.
Scared that Vikings game. That offensive game plan was abysmal.
It was terrible. But we don't want to. Just Big Dash's. We talked about this. Tyrone Tracy Strider looks like he's jogging. Yeah, he could break off some decent sized runs. I'm not disparaging Tyrone Tracy for what he can do, but I'm not sitting there and telling people. I'm not going to sit people and tell people, listen, this is. This is a guy that is going to give you 1,000 yards and is going to give you 300 carries. I'm just saying that Tyrone Tracy has a ability, but I've seen a guy now for 2 seasons and he's got the exact same MO every single season. And I understand that he's learning the position, but there is a natural instinct to playing running back. And Tyrone Tracy, and to no fault of his own, because of the fact that's not what he was grown up doing, is the fact that he was never a running back. So there is a natural instinct there. I've said this before. In college, they try to put me in a linebacker because they thought I was too slow at safety, but they're like, you know what? You're big enough to play linebacker. You're fast enough to play linebacker. But I had only played safety going from 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And at 20, they're like, you could be a linebacker. No, I didn't have the natural instincts to be a linebacker.
Fair point.
I had no fucking clue. And I always joke. I had to fill in for someone in one game, and for a quarter, the linebackers coach told me, he said, listen, he put me in a middle linebacker and said, think of it this way. You are in a circle, and the circle goes 5 yards that way, 5 yards that way, 5 yards that way, 5 yards that way. You stay in the circumference of that circle. I don't care what anything else does. You stand right there. And I didn't understand why until I went out of the circle. And as I went out of the circle, someone went for like 60 yards the other way. But my natural
football, baby. One guy lets down on the assignment.
But my natural instincts as a safety was to flow to the tight end.
I understand.
Because my job has always been, don't let anyone ever get behind you. Don't let anyone get deep. So that was my natural instinct. So Tyrone Tracy just may not have the natural instinct to be a bell cow star running back.
Can some of these running backs after college come out and develop better vision, better patience, and learn to? Sure, they can. But do you go from a guy who had no instincts to being an elite instinct? No. So what this running back room is a bunch of complimentary guys missing a bell cow. That's what you got. The question is, what's the top side of this room? How good is Cam Skattebo? Is he the star that many people are forecasting that he's going to be? Or is he a decent player? What is he? I mean, I'm not ready to anoint him this great star. I love some of the intangibles he brings on the field, the energy and some of those things, and it's great. I'm just not necessarily sold that this guy is going to be a stud run through people back. I think he can be productive, but I'm not sold that he's a star, and this room has to be addressed in 2027. If all 3 guys stay healthy, they can get through 2026 with the guys they got, and maybe this Bankston makes the team as a 4th running back, because if you go back and look at John Harbaugh history, a lot of times he carries, when he doesn't have a true bell cow, he carries 4 and he deploys people in different ways. It takes away from the unpredictability, but he's always made it work. That's how they found Keaton Mitchell. And maybe this is the next Keaton Mitchell. I'm not saying that's the case, and let's not get ahead of our skis here. And even if it is, what is Keaton Mitchell? But maybe there are some similarities in run style and speed and whatnot, but maybe he finds something here in this guy. Maybe he doesn't, but I wouldn't be shocked if after final cuts or as we get closer to the start of the season, they go do a check-in on a Najee Harris, or they check in on a Joe Mixon, and they add a guy to this room so that way if an injury does happen, the season is not over as we know it, and they can put out a capable professional NFL running back for every offensive snap. And, they kind of address things the way they've addressed the rest of this roster.
Emrod's got a great comment here because the Giants did, I think they ranked, fourth in the league in rushing. They still need to figure out the left guard and center spot. The total rushing yards were padded last season. Only 290 of Dart's 487 yards were called quarterback keepers. If Dart wasn't athletic, we'd be 18th in rushing. Yeah. You're not wrong. And I think that we have hopefully figured out the guard position with Francis. I'm leery, and I've always been leery about drafting a guy that high and changing his position. Mm-hmm. But we're doing it more out of necessity than we are doing it out of what we think Francis can be. Because I do think in 2 years he's going to be over at the right tackle position. He potentially could be over in 2 years at the left tackle position, depending on the injury history and how healthy Andrew Thomas stays over the next 2 seasons. But I still get massive concerns about any offense with John Michael Schmitz as your center. This is a guy that cannot handle the bull rush. He is an undersized center. We've talked about this, and I love JMS because he looks just like me. I'm literally we could be related. But even being related, I think that there could be an opportunity where Lucas Patrick could potentially slide in to get some games at center. And that's not saying a lot because you got an undersized guy who doesn't understand leverage, who has this propensity to either give up the hold or the big play. And against bull rushers, and especially, here's my problem. You can have an undersized center running a West Coast styled offense, but he needs to be athletic. And I don't see that in what we have right now in the center of this line. And I think to Emrod's point, you're going to have to, you are praying that, yes, you're returning 4 out of 5 starters, but you have to pray that Francis makes a smooth transition to guard and JMS doesn't get Dart killed on a bull rush.
I think the continuity allows this offensive line to continue to build on what it accomplished last season as a pass blocking unit. I think where the issues apply, to Emrod's point, is in the running game. The undersized center who doesn't play with leverage. Your point about Lucas Patrick, that's a power gap center.
Yes.
His best days are behind him. He started back in Green Bay a number of years back.
That's why I said some couple games. So I only said a couple games.
No, but I mean, he could be a guy that could fit what they want to do this year better. Left guard, the starter does not fit what they do. No. He's not back after this year. It's just a bad fit. He'll keep the continuity, help keep Jackson Dart upright in pass blocking situations, but it is going to hurt this gap power scheme that they're going to want to run as far as the running attack. And, between that and the running back room, it may not be all sunshine and roses with this power running game as everybody hopes. The fullback and Ricard helps. The multiple tight ends, it helps. But the realities are they don't have power outside of Francis on the interior of the offense of the interior of the offensive line. Their right tackle's not a great run blocking right tackle. And there's not a single guy along this offensive line that we know of that can execute the pulls necessary to run this gap power scheme. So it's going to be interesting to see how this running attack pulls together.
John Runyon is trash, and that doesn't help. JMS is in a contract year. I don't even worry about JMS being. I know people usually perform better on a contract year. And there's nothing. I have no qualms about JMS. I just don't think he's good at his job. I mean, and that's not a slight against him. I mean, it's just the fact that you are now here 4 years. I mean, You first year in the league, you led the league in holding penalties by center. Second year in the league, you gave up the most sacks allowed by a center. Third year, you got better, but when you start so low and you even go up a little bit, that does not tell me your play was exponentially better. It just tells me you got, and to your point, a lot of the competition we played towards the end of the season just was not at the highest level competition.
Wasn't a high level competition, and they weren't motivated to perform. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
Didn't matter to them like it didn't matter to us. So
yeah,
exactly. Take much out of this.
So I mean, I'm just curious. I'm rewatching games right now. Joe Ferry's watching just John Runyon. JS is mid. John Runyon is John Runyon is god awful.
He's an awful runner.
John Runyon, like I said, I laugh because I have a friend that still works in Green Bay, and John Runyon was coming up as free agent, and I called him up and I said, "What do you think of John Runyon?" First thing he told me was Green Bay's philosophy with John Runyon was they were not going to pay him more than $6 million. Mm-hmm. And honestly, they weren't even going to bring him back as a starting guard that following season if he re-signed, because they had already at times towards the end of the season and the playoffs had replaced John Runyon with a rookie, and they were literally interchanging these two guys the last 6 weeks of the season and into the playoffs. They were switching this guy and Runyon out. And then they went and picked up a guy in the third round, Green Bay, who turned out to replace John Runyon. That turned out he's an all pro now. And I laughed though, because like I said, I said, can you give me some feedback about John Runyon? And he's like, he's nothing like his father. He goes, he doesn't have the nasty streak. He cannot run. He says in Green Bay, the philosophy was do not run on John Runyon's side. And as I said earlier, jokingly, and they said, and don't pull him because he has a tendency of tripping over his own feet. And he was like, and they were just like, he's god awful. And they were like, and I love it because they're like, we wish you luck. I was like with John Runyon.
Here's the reality. They're two replacement level players that are bad scheme fits. And what that means, this is their last year here. And the reason they're here this year is Rome wasn't built in a day. You couldn't fix everything at once. These were a couple of things that couldn't be fixed. It's just the way it is, guys.
No, and that's what we said before. You're not going to fix that. You're not going to fix everything at once. And that's why I keep saying this is a 7-win team.
Right. I mean, to your point, to go all the way back to like the first point you've made all the way through all of this, when people start saying, I see 11 wins, I see 9 wins, I see 10 wins, I see 1 million wins, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of guys that don't fit what this team wants to do. There's a lot of so there's questionable fits, there's questionable ability, there's questionable depth. Again, I trust what John's trying to do. It's a process. This roster was bad enough that it wasn't going to be able to be fixed in one season, and the Giants don't benefit from one of the easiest schedules in NFL history like the New England Patriots did last year. And then running into injured teams in the playoffs. That doesn't appear to be the case for the Giants. So as a result, 7 to 9 wins is the window. Get development out of the quarterback. If let Jackson Dart develop, reach the numbers Tim talked about yesterday. If he reaches those goals, shows development, we start to find out who's going to be here for the long term, who has to go, and what areas need to be rebuilt, and win 7-8 games. You've got something.
You won 7 games in 2 seasons, the 2 prior seasons.
So, and you get that development. If the quarterback shits the bed and you win 4 games again, well, there's going to be an awful lot of stuff getting blown up. And then everybody misevaluated everything. But if the quarterback progresses, you win 7-8 games, you see development from some young guys, most notably that quarterback, and he reaches some of those landmarks you have for him. You're in good shape. You'll have some money to spend. You'll have some draft capital. You'll be on your way. Patience has to be the answer here, and you can't get caught up in the fantasy that everybody gets caught up every year. Oh, this team's going to be great this year. They ain't been great in a long time, and they ain't going to be great this year either, guys. They're going to be competitive in December, and that's all you want.
Emrod says likely is going to be good. Is going to be good, but we don't have Mark Andrews to do everything. Well, I'm not even going to get into that full comment because some ways Mark Andrews was holding back Likely because of the fact that he was not allowing Likely to get on the field. Second of all, you have Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson is not Mark Andrews, but Theo Johnson is more. Theo Johnson, if he gets his head and his ass screwed on right, is more than a serviceable tight end. He is a guy that can give you 600, 700, 800 yards on receiving. He is athletic enough to be a blocker. He just has to be willing to be the blocker. And I think Isaiah Likely, again, is not going to be used in the Mark. They had to put Isaiah Likely in the slot because of Mark Andrews. I mean, that's why a lot of times he's so good at what he does. Likely, they had to find a position for him, and that's why they play 270 snaps in the slot. And it's going to be the same way here. To me, Isaiah Likely is Evan Ingram. He's an H-back. That's what he's going to be, and that's what he's going to design to be. Big Dad says whoever the slot receiver is going to be, the majority of the targets should be a big year for Likely and Austin. And this, I like I said, Calvin Austin. I think Calvin Austin is going to be your starting slot guy, and I think to Dash's point, I think he's going to mix some snaps in with Likely. But Calvin Austin does so many different things in reference to versatility that the Giants, he really does fit in what the Giants are looking to do.
I wouldn't be shocked to see Fields get some slot snaps as well. Right? Run a lot of those slants with big guys. You want to make things easy for your quarterback? Let a 6'4", 220-pound receiver run slants. And just throw the football. He'll catch it. Shield out. You're calling a guy a power forward. What's more power forward than catching slants?
The only problem I have with Malachi Fields in the slot is the majority of the time your slot guy is your twitchy guy. He is your athletic guy. He's your speed guy. He's the guy that's got the little hitch in his step. I have to fully see what Malachi Fields does off the line in the NFL.
That's fair.
Because, like I said, the one thing and we've said this on the show for 5 years now. I've always said this: never watch a player's highlights. Never go watch a 5-minute highlight tape of any player, because all you're doing is getting highlights.
Like hiring somebody off of their resume.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can't make yourself look good on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, you're in trouble.
But what I have told everyone is, go watch Malachi Fields' Notre Dame highlight reel. And we did this as a homework assignment a couple of weeks back, and I said to people, come back next Sunday and tell me the one common factor that you see on the Malachi Fields Notre Dame highlight film. And some people did it, and I loved it because they said the same thing. Every catch seems to be a contested catch. Every catch, it seems that he is in the middle. He's in the sandwich between the safety and a corner. There's no separation. And that's what I was trying to get people to understand. I'm not sure yet how well and how quickly he's going to come off the ball. It's a little different when you're going to be running, you're going to be running a deep route. You could take an extra quarter second getting off the ball, but if I'm playing him in the slot, I can't see him being twitchy enough to even run that slant.
I don't think you're going to see it a ton. I do think you'll see it some, because I think there's that box out element, because who's your smallest corner? It's that nickel corner. Right. My 6'4" wide receiver and go against my 5 foot, the other team's 5'9" nickel corner. I think there could be something there. We'll see more as we see training camp and exhibition games unfold to see exactly what he actually does have against NFL competition.
The Big Dash says he's talking about JMS. I thought his wrestling background would have made him stronger against the Bull. It's funny because Joe Tippmann is the guy I wanted the Giants to draft. And of course he went the pick before to the Jets before we got JMS. And people that have been following the show will know and understand I've never been a fan of the JMS pick, because I had a problem with him dropping all that weight coming out of college. And I kept telling people, as a guy, I was never a wrestler, but as a guy for JMS who was a former college wrestler, I didn't see any balance and leverage a lot on this tape coming out of college. And I kept pointing that out to people saying, I don't understand how this guy was a wrestler because I don't see him playing with leverage, especially for an undersized center. Because listen, you could be a Kelsey. There's been plenty of undersized centers in this league. But if you're going to be an undersized center, the first thing that if you watch these undersized guys is they understand leverage and balance. I never saw that with JMS, and I still don't see it.
The results thus far are the results, and everything you say is true. For a wrestler, he really doesn't show a lot of leverage, and he does get pushed back a lot. And again, as we've talked about, he is a bad fit for what this team wants to do.
Exactly. It's Joe Ferris. Are you putting? Wait a minute. What are we talking about now with people here? I keep seeing. Are the goofballs and McLovin replacement level content? What are we talking about?
Because I called Runyon and JMS replacement level players.
I gotta go. I'm trying to go back and read all the comments here, but I'm telling you, this JMS is leader. Damn, Big Dash rewatching games is torture. Yeah, I wouldn't watch giant games. It's strictly torture. Are goofballs and McLovin replacement level content creators? Let's see. Are you putting the goofballs and McLovin on the same level? Asking for a friend. No, McLovin had high level interviews. I guess the show guest saw his talent or whatever. Victor McLovin is like Victor Cruz. He showed up out of the blue and left too quickly.
So there's a whole other show going on in the comments.
I know, and I know that. I got to get to the super chat. Listen, if you and I wish Ryan well, and I actually his birthday was a couple days ago, and I actually sent him he never responded, but I sent him a happy birthday text, because I'm a dick, but I sent him a happy birthday text. The thing with Ryan got guests because Ryan was a 17-year-old novelty.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to be honest, that's why he got guests, because he's 17 years old and he's starting a channel and he wants to be a sports reporter. So yes, he will get other people that someone like the goofballs may not get, because of the fact that they're, who would you rather go on, Joe? The 17-year-old kid who's trying to make a name for himself and probably get yourself some good press, or the goofball show?
Well, the 17-year-old kid, that may be a nice story. Just by the name, the goofballs, I think I kind of know what they are already. So
exactly.
I think I got my answer. Sorry, goofballs, whoever you are, but
like I said, so it's just got to be honest about it. We got to get the super chat, because the G-Man says, "Go super chats, go to Philadelphia Children's Hospital. We should sign a veteran running back if one becomes available." Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please. And we did. You probably and Jay Jan, you probably missed the entire portion of the show in the beginning. We talked all about that. The Giants, in my opinion, Big Dash and Joe Spano over here, I think the Giant room is fine. In my opinion, in my humble sports opinion, you are one snapped ankle away from seeing Eric Gray as your starting running back all year long.
Well, I don't think that's happening.
That scares the fucking shit out of me. The Malik Neighbors injury does not scare me as much, because of the fact that if you are running a West Coast style offense, if you are going to spread the ball around, if you are going to be playing between a -2 and 10-yard cushion, you have plenty of guys that can do that. But my concern is Tyrone Tracy bangs up his knee. Cam Skattebo shoulder hurts. I'm Turbo Miller and Eric Gray away from that, a minute away from that backfield.
So would you go visit Arizona? Arizona's got a plethora of backs. They added Love. They added Algier. So those are your two. First of all, I know Algier's not happy because he thought he was getting that job all to himself. And now he's back behind another generational back. So he's right back where he started from in Atlanta. But I don't think the Cardinals are going to trade him. But
I was going to ask, do you think the Cardinals would? Because, that would be a name I would go after. But do you think the Cardinals would even consider trading him?
I don't think so. Not this year.
Okay.
After this year, possibly. I think they would definitely consider trading James Conner or Trey Benson, who are, Conner's a pro. I mean, he's in that Najee Harris class. He's also dealing with some injuries.
He's got some injuries, though, and he only had 95 yards and 32 carries. I think Conner's I think James Conner's best days are far behind him now.
Okay, I can't argue that. You could look at a Trey Benson. He's a pro. I mean, he's not great. He's not going to embarrass you. Would
Connor be a better option than Dante Miller and Eric Gray? Oh yeah, I would run and get James Conner. And that
thing with a Trey Benson.
And the fucking Terminator jokes themselves it's gonna write themselves.
Yes, and the same thing with Trey Benson. There's another guy. He's on the level probably of Singletary at this point. You know that these are guys. Again, if you're stuck, if you got to send them out there, they ain't going to embarrass you. They're professionals. They're not good at this point, but they're pros. If you got to send them out there for a few games, you can survive. And that's what you need up and down your depth chart. And to John Harbaugh's credit, while he hasn't done a great job of addressing it necessarily in the running back room, he's done it all over the depth chart everywhere else on this roster. There are capable replacement level NFL pros dotting the second and third units of this roster. That's why the Giants have a chance to compete. The reason they're not going to be elite is because outside of a handful of stars, they have an awful lot of replacement level players that are being forced to start, and they're dotted with questions.
But here,
over their starting
I want to get because I want to stick with the running backs theory we have going here. Because Big Dash says, Tim, that's drastic. They need a veteran off the street before they settle on Eric Gray. Here's the problem, Dash. They haven't even taken a guy off the street. Right now, your running back room is Cam Skattebo, Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, Turbo Miller, Eric Gray, and Blankston. They haven't fielded a guy, and it may sound dramatic, but they haven't even fielded a guy yet anywhere. That to me is where I'm having what's perplexing me the most right now about the running back situation is there was this incensed panic over the wide receiver room that we had to go get OBJ. We had to go get OBJ. Why? If you take a look at the wide receivers that you have, and right now OBJ is 7th on the unofficial depth chart. There was, in my mind, there's more of a panic in you got a guy coming off a broken ankle. You got a guy in the third year who's only been a running back for 2 years. You have Eric Gray, who's rushed for 22 yards in 3 seasons, and Turbo Miller. And you brought in, and then your thought process is, well, we'll bring in this undrafted free agent out of New Mexico who has a fumbling issue, can't run between the tackles, but is fast as shit, and couldn't even, to Joe Spano's point, at one point in time, crack the starting lineup in New Mexico. And to your point, I'm not
owned that running back job outright, Tim. Owned that running back.
No, you never do it. I'm not being dramatic. It's just the fact that they right now have an understanding that Cam Skattebo, we don't know if he's going to be fully ready for training camp. So that still means you still have Turbo Miller, Eric Gray, and Blankston. They haven't gone out and gotten that guy off the street yet. And training camps in 30 days. So they're going to have to make some type of move in some type of situation because of the fact that it's just one of those things that if they feel comfortable now with what they have, but they didn't feel comfortable in the wide receiving situation, which to me, they had more talent and didn't need an OBJ, even with Neighbors not coming back maybe to week 3. It's telling me they must feel comfortable with, to Joe's point, Devin Singletary, Eric Gray, and Turbo Miller and Blankston, because why wouldn't you bring in a guy off the street now? Why wouldn't you just call it up a Nick Chubb? Why wouldn't you just, ask fielded a call about Joe Mixon, to your point, went over in Arizona, tried to make a trade. And that's what's kind of concerning me. But I'm with you, Big Dash. I agree 100%. I don't even think Gray makes the practice squad. No. I don't even know how the hell this guy's been on the team for as long as he's been. Nice kid. I've met him a couple times. Nice kid. And like I said, I've shown the picture, but when I'm bigger than Eric Gray, that should be a red flag.
I don't think Turbo's part of this practice squad either. I think that you've seen enough of this. You've run it back enough times. He's hung out on your practice squad for 2 years, and nobody's grabbed him, no matter who's been injured. So that's pretty telling. He'll be a perfect camp body. Take some bumps and bruises from the running back position during training camp and exhibition games, and then we'll cut you when the time is right. Same thing with Eric Gray. Obviously, I think these available running backs will get a lot closer look when we get closer to camp. I think a lot of them are working through injuries. Maybe they're not ready, but I could see the call to the Najee Harris coming week before camp starts. How are we looking? Are you ready to come in? Because they're going to have to work a guy like him light. You know what you're getting with Najee Harris.
Right.
A professional running back in both the run game and the passing game.
Well, you got a guy that had 4,000-yard seasons until the whole fiasco over with the Chargers. So I mean, he's still a quality back. But to your point, you're sitting there and wondering what his availability is right now.
Precious little since before the draft. They had him at like 75, 80% before the draft. They talk about he was running 16 odd miles per hour on the GPS and whatnot. And then I heard nothing. There's nothing out there on him. No phone calls. The agent put out the hype, and then we have heard nothing.
Right.
We've heard less on Mixon. We've just heard very little on these guys, which makes me believe they're not ready and that the calls will go out right before camp to see where they are. Then the calls might go out again if they don't like anything that comes out of the final cuts right before the season starts. And as they're making their final cuts, give these guys more time just to see where they are. I've also, how many times have we seen teams dial up a running back, grab him off the couch, and just because he's fresher than everybody else, he does a solid job. We've seen teams do that any number of times over the course of history. You get a guy, where were you last? I was on my couch, but I don't have 6 weeks of bumps and bruises on me like everybody else, so put me in the backfield. I'll do a solid job for you for a few weeks.
So I want to wrap this show up with the Giants going to training to Greenbrier, West Virginia training camp. Joe, I can't tell you how excited I am that I'm going to be spending 5 full days in Greenbrier, West Virginia.
It'll feel like a month, but don't worry about it.
I am so excited. I literally cannot tell you how excited I am that I'm going to be spending 5 days in Greenbrier, West Virginia. And
say you watch back to 1955, you'll be in business.
I was looking at some of the places around where we're staying. I'm like, listen, evidently the resort that they're staying at is beautiful. And there's a whole performance facility center that they're going to be practicing at. Do you see any benefits or any potential detriment to the Giants having their first few now? Because it's going to be only for the first few weeks, and then they're going to come back after the World Cup and after all this. But I don't believe it's going to. There looks like there's not going to have any fan access when they finally come back to MetLife. But do you see any detriment to the Giants? First of all, they're not going back up towards, Troy, New York. They're not going back up that way. They're not going, they're going to fucking West Virginia. Of course, I don't think this is ideal for John Harbaugh, but do you see any benefits or any detriment for them spending their first 2-3 weeks in West Virginia for training?
I see all benefits. It's old school football. If you remember, up until all these teams started building state-of-the-art practice facilities at their building. They had more of a regular practice field or a bubble, as we used to call it back in the day. Prior to that, every team went to some Division III college, somewhere remotely near them, and they had training camp. They slept in the dorms. They did 2-a-days. They bonded. It was a town where in the summer there was nothing to do, so nobody could get in trouble. So this reminds me a little bit of that old school training camp where in week 1, teams actually came out ready to play, not playing sloppy, horrible football. So you get them away from the distractions, because now in training camp, it's almost exactly like the regular season. They have practice and then they go home. This is old school. You're in nowhere, West Virginia. Sorry, West Virginia. You're in a facility. You're sleeping in rooms. You got no place to go and nothing to do. It's football, football, football for 2 and 3 weeks, and team building. You know, they'll have this one big day where they leave the facility and they go bowling, or they go to a pizza joint or something. I mean, there's nothing to do around there. So it's 24/7 football. When you're not practicing, you're looking at your playbook, you're working out, you're team building, you're bonding. Nobody's getting in trouble because there ain't no place to go to get in trouble.
I agree and disagree with that, because you have to remember a lot of what you're talking about is dictated by the CBA. There's only a certain amount of practice time you can have. There's only a certain amount of meeting times that you can have. There's only a certain, because like I said, I loved it when the Giants used to go up to Albany, because when they were up there, I mean, Albany, like I said, we stayed in Troy, New York, which was a dump. But they had a residence in there, and I think it's still there. That was phenomenal to get to the University of Albany, and it was such a great rate. But I remember when they were at Fairleigh Dickinson back under the Parcells days. And you're right, there was, you were basically stuck up there. But I think differently now with the CBA and everything else going on. I think
you're going to definitely have more downtime, because they won't be allowed. There's no 2-a-day practices. But you're sitting in your room. There's nothing to do. There's no place to go. Well, you might as well look at the playbook. A lot of this is going to be independent on the players, because they're not going to have any distractions, so they'll just do football on their own, because there's nothing else to do. Even if it's just sitting in their room looking at the playbook and things like that.
Joe Ferry says, Eric Gray, friend of the show, brought to you by the mighty FanDuel. Vintage performance by Joe Spano today. Gray is still on the team. Yeah, he's still on the team. Tim, any shows from minicamp? We didn't do any shows from minicamp, but I am going to be doing shows from training camp. So I will be there the first open week, which I Bleav I think it's the 29th is the first practice. So what we're going to do is we'll cover it from the stands like we did last year. We then will have a live stream in the morning, and then we'll have a live stream after camp. So that we'll do that as well. So, I mean, we're going to do the first, we had a choice. We could either do the first 3 days, which was July 30th, 31st, and August 1st, or we could do August 5th, 6th, and 7th. I took the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday because I didn't want to be up. If there's really nothing going on in Greenbrier, I didn't want to be up there on a Wednesday and a Thursday. I figured it might be like the, big time in the hot town tonight went on a Thursday and a Friday and a Saturday. So,
yeah.
But they've actually, it's going to be interesting because they've changed some of the rules in training camp. So now taking pictures and videos is not allowed during practice, and they can only be taken before or after practices. So I don't know how they're going to enforce that, but that's one of those interesting new rules. So it's going to take me home country road to.
What's your biggest watch point, Tim?
Watching my ass.
What's your biggest watch point at training camp? Is it Dart's feet?
My biggest watch point is watching my ass get back in the car and drive home when this fucking over. Because it's got fucking 6.5 hours to get there.
Is it Dart's feet? Is his footwork? Is that the thing is that your hot button? Is that the thing you're really trying to focus in on?
I have a couple.
Okay.
One of them was like last year. And it's going to be the Giant run defense, because last year, and we posted a lot of shorts about it in training camp, that the running back room for the Giants looked phenomenal in training camp, looked phenomenal. And I kept asking people all through training camp, is it because our running back room is so good or our run defense is so putrid? And I knew the answer. I knew it was our run defense. So I got to see what the run defense, what they're looking like. And I want to get an idea of what we're trying to install defensively from a scheme standpoint. And then number 2 is definitely going to be the offense. And number 2 is going to be last year, which was, I found interesting. Brian Dable, after a bunch of practices, worked on the footwork of Jameis Winston. It was almost weird because you got a guy that's been in the league for 9 years. And it was almost like he was a freshman being held back, and saying, okay, you're going to have to work on this. I'm going to be curious to see exactly what they do to your point. We've pointed this out on the show multitudes of times. We've shown the video. I want to see how they are helping Jackson Dart to improve his footwork, because that's going to improve his velocity, and that is going to improve his accuracy, which should improve his ball placement. And let's see what he looks like when he's trying to go over 15 yards and kind of look at it from that perspective. And like I said, I don't know exactly what a hardball camp is going to look like, because I've been at the Dable camp for the last 4 years. So I don't know how they're going to run this. I don't know if there's going to be one main practice field. I have no clue what type of training camp this is going to be. I laugh because like I said, I remember Tampa's training camp where we had the main field, we had the tent, and then we had 3 other fields. So I don't know how this is going to be divided or set up. So, I
was curious what you were looking to learn. Obviously, there's things to learn, because to me, Jackson Dart's footwork holds a major key here.
I agree with that.
And man, the ball goes where your lead foot points. That's where the football goes. Right. And his lead foot does not point where he's throwing the football. It's simple quarterback footwork 101 is your lead foot, the toes on your lead foot need to point where you're throwing the football. If they don't, the football will not go there.
Right. We've pointed that out on this show. I think ad nauseum at times. I think people, like I said, I don't have a stake in the Jackson Dart success or failure. The Giants do. So I'm just pointing out, when I look at some of his film, and I actually broke down some additional film from minicamp with his footwork. And maybe we'll do a show on Sunday about it, because there was some distressing things that I saw footwork wise. And I don't listen, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, I'm an NFL quarterback coach, but I know enough to Joe's point that you have to look at the position of his feet, and he's going to have to build up muscle memory in regards to having his feet in the correct position to help increase his accuracy, and which will help increase his velocity and his placement. But there were 4 other clips that I found that I was slightly distressed about. And we shown the one, and we showed it, and I think maybe I will put it all together for Sunday's show. But I think there is good things about Jackson Dart, but as a true NFL passer,
well, I know what you're also pointing at.
Yeah, and I don't want to give it away because I want to talk about it on Sunday. But yeah, I'm a little
because there's one element to him that reminds me, unfortunately, of Daniel Jones, and it may not be the one you think.
Yeah,
or maybe it is. Yeah, and I don't want to spoil it here. If you want to save it for Sunday,
we're gonna save it for Sunday. And to Joe Ferry's point, I mean, but the thing is this: I'm not trying to change how he throws. Because listen, if we're going to talk about the release angle of Jackson Dart, that's a whole other show. But then you would have to talk about the release angle of Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and all these other guys. I'm looking more at his actual footwork. because his footwork, if Tim Tebow, they tried to alter his entire throwing motion, his footwork, and everything. I'm just saying there are plenty of guys that have come into the league that have had horrible footwork. Yeah. And you can fix that. This footwork is something you can fix. Mm-hmm. Changing someone's throwing motion completely, that should be something you should never do. Because if you've been throwing that way in the pros, you've been throwing that way since Pop Warner. That ain't gonna fucking change. But figuring out how to help his footwork and put him in a position where he is more accurate, has better ball placement, and maybe a little bit more zip on the pass. I don't want to get into it right now because I could talk about this for like 3 hours. Because I was watching shit last night, and I kept running it back and forth. And it's almost like when I was breaking down Tommy DeVito's throwing motion, and I pointed out that Tommy DeVito, if you watched him, had an elongated pitcher's motion when he threw. It was almost, and it took him a couple extra seconds. And I kept saying, you're going to start seeing a lot of batted balls for this guy. And then we ran into the Saint game. And I told everyone before the Saint game, this is where Cinderella gets exposed. And it's what happened because he also had like 4 balls batted down that game because of the fact that it's just the way his motion is. And teams spend all this time figuring it out. And it's not like I was, inventing, I was inventing electricity. It's just people knew this. People knew it immediately. And there's just a couple things that I see with Jackson Dart that I can be fixed, but I cringe.
I understand totally. I mean, and some guys are special enough to overcome those things. Like you talk about elongated throwing motions. Lamar Jackson has an elongated throwing motion, but he's Lamar Jackson, not Lamar Jackson.
And I would never try to change his throwing motion.
Right.
Because I don't know what the
hell is a different animal. And Brian Callahan's good with that stuff. Joe Burrow gives him a lot of credit. There are a lot of quarterbacks around this league that are very confident, and they talk about and they extol the virtues of Brian Callahan and how he works on these things. So if anybody can get this out of Jackson Dart and kind of write these things, it's this group of coaches. Now we'll see where it goes.
Exactly. All right, guys, I got the dogs going crazy upstairs. I got a swim party I got to get to. So we're going to lock it out for today. Probably not going to be able to do a live tomorrow, but I'm going to try to get a podcast up tomorrow as well. I want to thank the Venerable Joe Spano for dropping in. I want to thank everyone from Joe Ferries to, of course, Big Dash, WK, to everyone else who came running into the chat today. It's been a great show. It's been a great day. We're going to have a lot of big content coming up, especially during training camp. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And as always, this is Tim, this is New York Giants Straight Talk, brought to you by the mighty FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com, the #1 sportsbook in America. And we're out of here.
That motherfucker must have lost his goddamn mind.